Money, moolah, legal tender. I love money. They say money can't buy happiness. Who's they? Have they ever tried buying things? Money is super useful. Are you hungry? Buy a sandwich. Are you cold? Buy a jacket. Are you lonely? Hot singles in your area are dying to meet you. Since everyone wants this stuff, it's kinda hard to get. You have to sacrifice hours of your pathetic, ever-shortening life to get your grubby mitts on bills to pay the bills. If you're gonna give your hard-earned money to someone else, it'd better be worth it. Of all the wonderful stuff you could buy, why the hell would you buy this? Twice! Pokémon is a franchise that knows a lot about making money. They're one of the most profitable media franchises of all time. Slugma grind set paying off. Most of that Scrooge McDucklet hoard is thanks to merchandise sales. You could slap Pikachu on pretty much anything and make a quick buck. And if Pikachu doesn't work, well, you've got over 1,000 other critters that might do the trick. Safe to say that this cheeky little rat won't be going hungry anytime soon. But you can't make plushies or lunchboxes or sleeping bags without the games. The games are the genesis of this entire Team Rocket racket, and although they're not the biggest slice of the pie, Game Freak's special recipe ensures that that slice is still plenty profitable. What other franchise can sell you the same product twice, or thrice, or 4 times? Not that other IPs haven't tried to pull the same crap, but they're rightfully raked over the coals for it. At least when Totodile Howard sells you the same bug-riddled mess for the 11th time, he doesn't pretend it's a different game, and hey, it's actually on different hardware. For whatever reason, Pokémon is the only one who gets a perpetual pass on predatory pricing. Why? Because they've always done it? Because they've normalized bad ability, by the way, the Grift? Well, they can't keep getting away with it. It's time to stop. The newest additions to the Pokémon lineage, Scarlet and Violet, are the hot topic of discussion in current year, so that's where we'll begin our analysis. Scarlet and Violet, of course, follow the same dual release format that they've always followed, which is why I had to waste extra breath saying Scarlet and Violet. This video is not a review of Scarlet and Violet. Instead, I want to laser focus, bad move by the way, on critiquing the multi-release format. And my issues with the system should apply regardless of the quality of the games released. But while we're here, we may as well talk a bit about the most recent games, since you might be considering buying at least one of them. Don't. I'm told there's a good game beneath the bugs and minor visual glitches. You know what's under the jank? Nothing. These games are so soulless, lazy, and empty. To put it in an advertiser-friendly way, I didn't like these games. And not because I don't like Pokémon. My entire channel is about Pokémon. I have hundreds of videos about Pokémon, and importantly, none of those videos are about attacking the franchise or about how bad Pokémon is, except this one. Scovillains aren't hatched. They're evolved. And this game was the straw that broke the camera-up's back for me. I played through the entirety of Scarlet, including full completion of the Pokédex. I don't want a certificate, I want a refund. And that's all I'll say for now. Let's say you bought Scarlet. You paid full price and received a full game's worth of content. You actually don't, but just pretend, okay? You could buy the other version, also for full price. How much new content will you receive? Keep in mind that these games sell for the AAA asking price of $60 US. That's a lot of money, and depending on the game pricing in your region, that price could equal an investment of hours or even days of your life. For the game to be worth $60, it has to be at least worth what $60 could have been spent on instead. I'm not gonna say food or other essentials, because that could apply to any video game. I won't compare it to indie games or older, discounted games that would give you better value. I won't even compare it to $60 releases on other consoles that you might not own. For the opposite version of the game to be worth full price, it has to be better than another $60 AAA title for the Switch. So tell me, what do you get for purchasing Violet? You get the version-exclusive Pokémon.
Hold it!
Listen to me. Version exclusives are not more content, they are cut content. Do you really think Skuntank and Swallet were too stinky to fit on one cartridge? Something's rotten in the region of Paldean. I'm not talking about spoiled sandwiches. The only reason version exclusives exist is to try to trick your manky brain into thinking you're getting something new when you buy a second version, instead of the reality that you paid full price for a mutilated base game that had content ripped out of it to be sold separately. No, version exclusives are not a perk of the dual version system. So let me ask again, what are the actual differences in Violet? I'll give you a few seconds to mull it over. I can think of 2 differences. And I'm a scripted voiceover, so I have a lot of time to think of more, but I don't think there are any. And while we're thinking, spoiler warning for the end of Scarlet and Violet, I guess. Okay, you ready? Number 1, the final boss is different. I say different as if they're mechanically different in any interesting way. They're copy-pasted, but they have a different model and use different Pokémon. So I guess for a Pokémon game, that counts as different. Difference number 2, there's more purple. Your ride legendary is more purple, this guy's jacket is more purple, the uniform you and your classmates are stuck wearing the whole game is more purple, and even the school loading screen is more purple. That's it. $60 for some palette swaps. You could have bought this instead! You deserve more for your money. Now don't take that word deserve too personally. You might be a horrible person. Maybe you're the world champ at puppy pummeling. Maybe you add celery to tuna salad, equally despicable. I have no idea what kind of villainy you get up to, but I at least know that if you spend 60 buckaroos on a second version, you deserve better. Compare Pokemon to Yokai Watch, another monster collector that's better than Pokemon in every way, except it doesn't have Pikachu, so no one plays it. Also, it's too Japanese and difficult for Western audiences to relate to. The first generation of Yokai Watch was a single release, but then they caught the Pokerus and did 3 versions each for their second and third generations, and people hated it, so their 4th gen has only a single version. And single-digit FPS. Wow, this game is rough. That's not to say that dual versions are always a grift. There's the small indie franchise you might have heard of. Rumors of Zoro or something? I don't know, I only play Pokemon. And they actually did a double release, which is a small combo count for a Capcom game. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, both for the Game Boy Color. How similar are these games? Let's make a list. Link's the main character. That's it. The stories are completely different, the dungeons are completely different, and the gimmicks are completely different. Ages is all about manipulating the past to influence the present, and Seasons is all about Sawsbuck. And these sussy bakas. Ages is way better. But the point is that they're different games! And if you beat both, you get a tiny bit of extra content where you can link the games and face the true final boss. The one who's been pulling the strings from the shadows the entire time. Spoilers incoming for a 22-year-old Game Boy Color game in 3, 2, 1. It's Ganon. Let's address some arguments in favor of Pokemon's dual version system that you may have been screaming at the screen over the past few minutes. Assuming you haven't already disliked the video and bought the double pack out of spite. Bad move, by the way. I think the strongest argument is that you're not supposed to buy both versions yourself. That the version split exists to encourage trading and interaction between friends playing opposite versions in parallel. Maybe, but Game Freak sure wouldn't mind if you bought both versions. Have no nearby friends and are missing some exclusives? You could buy the other version. Some very powerful Pokemon only evolve through trading. You could coordinate with some other rando, or you could buy the other version, and use that second Switch you bought for another Animal Crossing island. There's only one save, despite multiple save files being possible on technology from the previous millennium. Don't want to lose your progress to do a second playthrough? You could buy the other version. Look! They offer to sell you both at once, and you even get to pay 1 extra set for the convenience. What a deal! They clearly won't lose sleep over you buying both versions. But let's say you're a savvy gamer who knows it's only worth buying one of them. What's my next expert counter-argument against dual versions? Your mom! Or your grandma. You know, the one who calls everything a Nintendo. You might not know this, but Pokémon is actually a franchise aimed at little kids. If you're watching this video, you either are a kid or used to be a kid, which I guess describes everyone. So you should be keenly aware that kids don't have any money. What they do have is incredible influence over mom and dad and granny and gramps who do have money and make the perfect marks for the dual version business model. Consumers who buy the games, but don't actually play them. How are parents supposed to know that the games are almost identical? Well, why would they sell them separately if they weren't different? Do you really think a company would do that? Try to deceive customers into buying more products? Poppycock. I firmly believe that Game Freak intentionally makes the games worse to sell more copies. Create the problem and sell the solution. Straight out of EA's playbook, so you know the customer is tanking 100 base power hyper drill up the ash. You used to be able to use the global trade system to fill out your Pokédex. It worked great in Gen 6. Ever wonder why we never got a GTS as good? Do you think Game Freak forgot how to do functional online? Actually, it's Game Freak we're talking about, so maybe. But I think they realized it actually worked too well. So in Gen 7 they locked it behind the ridiculous Festival Plaza, but it was still too convenient. So come Gen 8, they completely gut the GTS and Frankenstein its corpse across 2 separate apps, one on your Switch and one on a smartphone app of all things, with an extra monthly subscription gaining full functionality because they've got you by the Pokeballs. They know you'll pay the ransom for Pokemon Home Arrest. A ransom you'll have to pay for several months for no benefit. On purpose, of course. Can't have people trading version exclusives. The smartphone app is especially insidious. You probably have a smartphone. In fact, statistically, you're watching this on a smartphone right now. You know who probably doesn't have a smartphone? Little kids. You know what's easier than asking for a new smartphone? Asking for a new game. Another argument in defense of dual versions is that it could be worse. And you're right, I concede that it could be a lot worse, yeah. Unlike with gacha and loot box models that have infested every corner of gaming, mainline Pokemon does not have any microtransactions or even allusions to gambling, RIP Game Corner. The most money you can lose to this model is $120, plus $60 for DLC, since you need both versions of that as well, plus the monthly ransom payments to Pokemon Home. But compared to the potentially infinite money sink that is the gacha system, sure, mainline Pokemon is not as predatory. If you want to give all your money to Pokemon, you'll have to play Pokemon Go. Or Shuffle. Or Cafe Mix. Or Master Sex. Or Unite. So just how many times has Game Freak sold us the same product multiple times? My man Looker got cut from these games just like over half the Pokemon themselves. But we can still try and investigate each gen to see how deep this fraud runs. I'm sorry, I'm still not over how transparently scummy this whole business model is. Could you imagine if I made 2 versions of the same video, but with a few different lines and whole chunks of analysis ripped out to force you to watch both versions? And what if I later made a 3rd video that had most, but not all, of the content of the original 2 videos, but then paywalled it so it was only available to these mighty Patreons you see on screen now? Wouldn't that be disgusting? Could you imagine such a thing? What can I say? I learned from the best in the business, baby! Links to the other videos, Patreon, and Discord in the description. And while we're sleazing out, don't forget to like and subscribe! Also, I challenge you to comment with any version differences you notice. These videos are unironically more distinct than some version releases, even though for the most part, I'm just toggling a background in my editing program. Generation 1! The original Red and Green are the exact same game, except for the version exclusives, which do not count. However, I will actually defend Game Freak here. Not a Ferrothorn tier defense, we're talking the Bastiodon tier defense, okay? Back in the dark days before widespread internet and Wi-Fi, if you wanted to trade, you had to actually talk to other humans. Like, with words in real life, and then connect your Game Boy to theirs with a physical cable and trade that way. It's still super predatory and not at all worth selling separate games, but if the excuse is to encourage social interactions, back in Gens 1, 2, and 3 it kinda worked. I'm still counting these as one game sold twice though. Then there's the fixed blue version, which became both the red and blue versions we were sold in the West. Yeah, the insane spaghetti we got was actually the fixed version. Mainly the select swap glitch, which made a ton of glitches, and also this whole YouTube channel possible. I'm gonna be generous and only count this as one additional version of the same game. And finally, there's Yellow. Special Pikachu Edition, the very first premium version. For all Game Freak's faults, you gotta give them credit for inventing colors, which were now available in-game. This version was also themed after the anime, which meant a few battles were different, but it's 95% the same game. You also had a partner Pikachu, which could never evolve, making it worse than vanilla Pikachu. What a dishonor. Yellow was marketed as the definitive better version, but that implies the previous versions were worse. After all, why would you buy this new version if it wasn't better than the old ones? Keep this in mind whenever we talk about third versions. They make previous versions into paid beta tests. But hey, better than paid alpha tests. Gen 1 ends with one game sold 4 times. Pretty appalling, but Game Freak was unironically a small indie studio back then. Gotta make money somehow. Generation 2! Generation 3! Ruby and Sapphire are the same game, except the cover legendary and its cutscenes are different. There are also minor story differences. You can either fight a Mightyena and a Camerupt, or a Mightyena and a Sharpedo. The premium Emerald version has you fight Mightyena, Camerupt, and Sharpedo, and it also changes Team Magma's base to actually be in a volcano instead of underwater like it was in the base games. Gym leader teams have been improved, but that probably took them about an hour in their team editor. No real credit for that. Emerald also restores animated sprites that were absent in Ruby and Sapphire, but instead of new sprite work like in Crystal, you get this, in my opinion, lazy and unappealing squash and stretch effect. Ugh. For whatever reason, they also added even more water by replacing the champion with the previous water gym leader. I love water! I love water! I know this isn't Wallace, you have to watch the Violet version. Perhaps most excitingly, the Battle Tower has become the Battle Frontier, an in-depth post-game area that tests your strategies, your patience, and let's be honest, your luck. The Battle Frontier is a beloved series staple, and variants of it would appear in all entries going forward. So one game sold 3 times. But don't forget about the Kanto remakes! Fire Red and Leaf Green are the exact same game. No, really. There are 0 differences. Red and Blue at least had different monochrome modes if you stuff them in a Game Boy Color. Fire Red and Leaf Green are the exact same. I'd say it doesn't get worse than that, but you know it does. Gen 3 ends with 2 games sold to you 5 times. Generation 4. Generation 5. Does anyone else think that Generation 5 is underrated and overhated? Black and White are the same game, except the cover legendary and its cutscenes are different. There's also the Black City and White Forest post-game areas, which are horrifically convoluted attempts to force you to interact with the Entralink system, which was some browser-based internet witchcraft. If you weren't there, believe me, you weren't missing much. Instead of a premium third version we got full sequels? Wow! Black and White 2 are completely different than Black and White 1. Unfortunately, Black 2 and White 2 are the exact same game, except for the cover legendaries Route 4 for some reason, and the Black City White Forest Internet Explorer Hellscape. They also had version-exclusive difficulty options, sorta. Beating White 2 allows you to unlock easy mode on other people's games. Yeah, beat the game to unlock easy mode for someone else! Black 2 unlocks hard mode for someone else's game, which can actually be easier than normal because while it gives enemies more Pokémon and held items and increases enemy levels, it doesn't actually increase their stats to match their levels, which means that the XP rubber banding will make you more overleveled than you would be in normal mode. Brilliant! But not in Brilliant Diamond, don't worry, it's coming. Gen 5 ends by selling 2 games 4 times. Only a 1-2 ratio, not bad. Generation 6. Generation 7. Does anyone else think that Gen 7 is underrated and overhated? Sun and Moon are the exact same game, except the cover legendary and its cutscenes are different. The Rodent Totem Pokemon is also different, and one Trial Captain rematch, along with some Battle Tree partners, are also different. Most bizarrely, Moon's in-game clock is offset by 12 hours, which can make it kinda disorienting to play. I guess the idea was that most people play during the daytime, so the time offset would mean the game would consider it night, and its Moon version? I don't know. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are the most blatant cash grabs in the entire series, and we're talking about Pokemon here. They're so similar to Sun and Moon that I'm not even gonna count them separately. They're the same game, except the Ultra versions remove Jelly Milf Lusamine, add a ton of annoying dialogue, the Necrozma stuff, the Rainbow Rocket episode, and some Ultra hallways. All the new stuff probably ends up being net an hour, maybe. More than the usual amount of version differences, sure, but selling them as 2 separate new releases is the most brazen swindle the mainline games have ever tried to pull. So far. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee kinda count as Gen 7 games. They're the exact same games, except your partner Pokemon is different, and your rival will either use Raichu or Jolteon. Gen 7 ends by selling 2 games 6 times. A ratio of 1-3 is better than Gen 1's ratio of 1-4, but given how established Game Freak was by this point, I'd say Gen 7 actually feels the sleaziest. Golden Go would be proud. Generation 8! Gen 9. This should be easy. Scarlet and Violet are the exact same game, except the cover legendary and its cutscenes are different. The final boss is also kinda different, and the school colors change. That's it. I'm sure the DLC will add more exclusive content as well as fix the performance issues, right? Gen 9, for now, sells 1 game twice. So how full are the company coffers in the end? Throughout the generations, Game Freak has sold us a total of 17 distinct games in 40 separate releases. More than double the products on the shelves just by copy-pasting, pressing backspace on a few exclusives, and playing with some color shaders. It's a dark-type tactic for sure, but the numbers don't lie, it works. And it'll keep working as long as people keep buying, which they will, because it's Pokemon. This is how it's always been. They told us to catch them all, and they keep getting away with it because no one is trying to catch them. I hope you'll forgive me for making the viewing experience worse by butchering my own video like this. It's nothing personnel. It's just good business. And hey, I didn't charge you $60. Thanks for watching. And be sure to watch the opposite version for the full experience.